Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and it is my privilege to host this show where I get to talk to folks from all over the world who are education thought leaders and innovators. We'll hear inspiring stories from educators, EdTech founders, AI experts, and others who are fearlessly innovating and delivering unique learning experiences. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started.
And if it's taken in the context of education, if it's like a tutor character that you really admire, like the mouse in ABC Mouse, for example, and once kids begin to care for this character, then it becomes sort of a facilitator for learning that, I need, or like the owl in Duolingo.
Yeah.
It shows up in like small animations here and there. And it's not like we have fallen in love with that character obsessively, but it becomes like a familiar facilitator of the learning experience.
Today's guest is Sonia Tiwari, and she is an expert in the design and development of characters that enhance learning experiences. We had a fascinating discussion about the intentional design considerations and the healthy and unhealthy interactions or relationships that students may have with AI-powered characters. Keep listening. Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and I have the privilege today, finally, we've been trying to get together for a long time, with Sonia Tiwari. So Sonia holds a PhD in learning design and technology from Penn State University, where she was also an adjunct professor of learning experience design. She's been a children's media research consultant for almost 9 years and has developed a framework for designing AI-powered characters as facilitators of learning experiences. Now, this year, Sonia was selected as one of 20 scientists from across the world to participate in the Falling Walls Foundation's year-long Female Science Talents Intensive Track. It's a program to support significant career breakthroughs. Now, her research explores the impact of AI characters' interactions on children's learning experiences. And this is an important topic. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, Sonia. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric. Yeah, I'm super happy to finally schedule this after a whole year of back and forth.
Yes. We have been busy, but busy is good. So before we jump into the AI interactions with and its impact on education there and learning experiences for children, I do want to get a little background, get to know you a little bit better here. So that first conversation we had so long ago, I recall we talked about your background in film and video game development. And of course, we shared some common experiences there, working with artists and animators in the game industry. But you took a different career path. So you kind of changed gears and you decided to focus on learning design and then pursued your PhD with Penn State. So how did that come about? What got you out of the kind of commercial entertainment industry and into education?
Yeah, I think like in art school during my MFA, all artists kind of have this natural urge to do original work or meaningful work. And I studied with a lot of ambitious artists. And when I went to work in the gaming industry as a character designer, I quickly realized that most of the game studios in the Bay Area mobile gaming industry were sort of following a template. Like they would observe like, oh, which is the top grossing game on iTunes this month, and let's just reskin it. And if it's Farmville, let's make it Dragonville or some other Ville. And so it kind of felt like I was like creatively challenged in those environments, feeling like we are just producing a different version of the same concept. And one of the game studios where I worked had an internal research team, and I had many conversations with them about how could I sort of design this character that is more developmentally appropriate, or is there some information from child development theories or education theories that I can tie in design? And one of the researchers there kind of joked that, well, that sounds like a dissertation topic. Like it's not a question that usually people ask in the design team.
Mm.
And so I just, out of curiosity, started with reading academic articles because I was just curious and it wasn't required by my job to inform designs by child development. So I started out of curiosity. And then after a while, like almost 8, 10 year gap, then I finally decided that, you know what, I have read enough and I'm still curious, and it would make sense to kind of shift gears. And we all talk about this gap between theory and practice, industry and academia, but there's not much effort in trying to bridge that gap besides just talking. And so it felt like a strategic, practical move to take my industry experience and then put it into practice in academia.
Awesome. I love the whole concept of it because it is so, well, so I worked in the game industry, right? And I absolutely agree with you that there isn't much thought that goes into the appropriateness of character design for any particular age group. There's certainly no emphasis on learning experience on the, commercial for-profit game industry side. It's just about making money and getting kids hooked, and so there's a lot of effort that goes into that. How do I get a kid engaged, right? What do they like about a character, right? So they care a lot about that, but they don't necessarily care about the learning experience or whether this is really good for the kid or not, right? That experience that they're getting out of it. So yeah, so let's kind of dive in. You've studied this stuff. You've done, a deep dive into kind of learning science and learning experience. So what has this taught you about the important, kind of aspects of character design and how it affects learning experiences?
I think like there's this research coming from Japan on like the kawaii visual design and the psychological impact of it. That's been my main motivation around studying cute characters in particular. And so this researcher, I'm forgetting the first name, is not last name is Nitono, and he came up with this kawaii framework of design that kind of helps you connect with a character because of the emotional vulnerability that it projects. So, like rounded shapes and soft colors or gentle, non threatening type of behaviors psychologically program us to kind of want to nurture for that character and like make us empathetic towards that character. Even if it's like, a baby Yoda type of Grogu type of character, which is not cute in the traditional sense, it's sort of ugly, sort of creepy, but still very cute. But even
Yeah.
then, like the success of the Mandalorian show is also that kind of contrasting dynamic of like, here's this really tough guy looking after this really vulnerable baby.
Who we
And
learn
so,
isn't really that vulnerable, right?
right, right. But yeah, even just like the contrast in their size and the contrast in their species, and it's crossing like borders of a Mandalorian looking after a Jedi, which is not a traditional thing. All of that story and background and character design kind of ties into us as an audience caring about the story, about the show.
Mm.
And that is what fascinated me about the psychology of character, that you can by design make people care about a fictional character
Mm.
so much that they would, in terms of gaming, they would buy props and assets and houses and accessories for this digital character that is not even real. And if it's taken in the context of education, if it's like a tutor character that you really admire, like the mouse in ABC Mouse, for example, and once kids begin to care for this character, then it becomes sort of a facilitator for learning that, oh, I need, or like the owl in Duolingo.
Yeah.
It shows up in like small animations here and there. And it's not like we have fallen in love with that character obsessively, but it becomes like a familiar facilitator of the learning experience. So that cuteness can be weaponized and turned into an obsession, and all of these character AI type of chatbots that people are spending hours there, or it can be put in a time limited, structured, goal oriented environment like tutoring,
Mm.
and then turned into a useful tool. So sometimes I hear these kind of blanket statements that, oh, if you anthropomorphize a character, it's bad, or don't give it a name, or don't call it him or her, just call it it, and then it will be resolved. And unfortunately, the world doesn't work this way. Like people name their cars, their washers and dryers. We name things all the time.
Yeah.
I had a friend in engineering who had like named his soldering iron something. And so just like by anthropomorphizing something is it's like a simplistic solutions to a systemic problem. And we can't solve big problems with this BuzzFeed type of list, like do these three things and then you're good, or like do this one thing and then your kids will be safe. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. So I just thought of an example actually from yesterday. So you talked about this kind of genericized kind of character. So I was at an event yesterday and I should have taken some video. You would have loved this. So she pulls out this bag full of these little plush toys. And so her presentation, she's got a book. Actually, she was on the show, Dr. Jennifer Chang. She she created this little character called Pedagucci. So it's after pedagogy. She calls him Pedagucci, but she specifically introduced him as he is gender neutral. He's just plain neutral, right? And but these teachers went kind of nuts. She had a bag full of these things and she was throwing them out into the audience, and people were climbing over each other trying to get these little plush toy Pedaguccis. So anyway, so it's
Yeah,
fun, right? It's great that she created this little character to kind of help talk about pedagogy and the importance of pedagogy in education. And but yes, it was very neutral.
yeah, and like some 5, 6 years ago, I did a research fellowship at the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, and they had an entire exhibit on Sesame Street and like the history of those designs. And their history is similar. They have like these abstract characters on purpose so that a lot of children can relate to them. There's no specific nationality, ethnicity, language, and it has always had this franchise has had a wide reach in so many different contexts
Yep.
because of that kind of abstractness. But also, it's kind of like I was reading the design case study of Hello Kitty, why it doesn't have a mouth, like it's just the eyes in many of the designs. And the character designer was saying that, well, I wanted kids to imagine whatever expression they wanted to give Hello Kitty.
Oh,
And like if they're feeling sad, they can assume that, she's sad as well. And so even in the example that you just shared, even though the designer has made it so that it's neutral in many way, if people spend enough time with this toy, they are going to assign it a backstory, a gender, a name, or what, just like a
yeah.
blank teddy bear, which is gender neutral in every way, like a brown teddy, standard run-of-the-mill
Yep.
brown teddy bear. But different
Yeah.
kids have given it a different story and name.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a company in the US called Build-A-Bear, I
Right.
remember, that yes, kind of did that, right? You had this kind of generic base bear and the kids could dress it up and right, make it have whatever personality they wanted for it. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
it's so amazing you bring that up because one of my like upcoming studies, I mean, hopefully the publication will be out soon too. But I did a one comparison between a child who goes to build a bear and who goes through this entire customization process and is just so in love because of sort of the in psychology sometimes called like a produce effect. Like if you created something, you tend to like it more, like you
okay.
were part of the customization process. And the same child then goes home and the mom has given her like it's called the dino toy. It's an AI toy, which is just a plush dino. It's fitted with a AI speaker. And so I kind of had access to the videos of this child talking to the AI toy versus like a just a regular plush bear toy. And with the bear, she was like, it was like a interaction analysis. So we look at the gestures, the expressions, analyze the conversation script and all that. And so she was visibly excited and so in love with the Build-A-Bear bear versus with the dino toy. She did have sort of like a long conversation, but she was distant. Like the toy was sitting on the couch and she was away. She wasn't like cuddling with it, and she
Yeah.
was like cautious the whole time. And she was holding this Build-A-Bear even in this conversation. And so that was such a beautiful and positive almost reflection for me, that I know people are worried that if we expose our children to AI characters and AI toys too much, that they will lose touch with their childhood and it will get in the way of their relationships. But it was nice to see that kids naturally want to assign their own story and leave a lot of things to imagination.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
isn't
hope
this
that it will continue. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is also part of the trend, though, with these AI characters now, right? Is you go kind of build your own. You can give it all of the, you know, visual attributes you want, the hair color, the eye color, the shape of the face. You can customize them to the appearance you want, even voice, right? Some of these platforms have multiple different voices you can assign. And so how much does that impact, again, this positive or negative interaction we may have with an AI tutor if we get to customize this person to make them attractive to us?
Yeah, I think like it's also what I was sharing earlier, right? Like it's the it's more of a systemic challenge. So for a child who is not getting a lot of attention from family and is left alone with such a talking toy, they might spend a lot of unregulated time with it. And even if the toy is not 100% to their liking, whether it's customized or not, even then they could fall into this fake companionship relationship, this parasocial companionship with this toy, versus like the example where I was talking about, the mom was in the scene the whole time. And so it wasn't like a very long conversation. And this child, a very young child, was going through chemotherapy. And so she was kind of afraid of going to the hospital. And so the mom was kind of coming in and out of the conversation and saying things like, you know, would you like to share how you're feeling? And so she was talking to kind of both the mom and the toy at the same
Yeah.
time. And so in that kind of like co-regulated environment, it wasn't too bad. And the AI actually gave some nice suggestions that, oh, don't be afraid. The doctors are really good at what they do, and they'll make sure that you don't get hurt and your family is going to be around you. And so it was helpful in that particular case. But
Yeah.
again, like as we have seen, the character AI has been in the news, and as part of the lawsuit against them, Mrs. Garcia, the mom of the teenager who
Mm.
committed suicide, she kind of released the transcripts of the chat, the final chat leading up to the self-harm. And so I was going through those chat logs, and it's not at the same level. That AI said nothing helpful. It was absolutely destructive. It was kind of grooming this child. So he was talking to this Daenerys character from Game of Thrones.
Yep.
And so the chats had grooming type of language that, oh, if only we could reunite in another realm, kind of like gently nudging the child towards taking some kind of action. And so that's the root of that lawsuit. And so yeah, not all AI chatbots are built the same, and also every child's context is so different that it's hard to say that, oh, follow these three rules and then the AI interaction would be safe. It's built around the how involved the caregivers are, what is the pattern of the conversation, how much time the child is spending, is
Mm.
there a goal that's established upfront, or it's just free flowing conversation.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I also reminds me, I did an episode with Moxie, and I don't know if you've seen Moxie, but so in this case, this was being done in a psychologist, a therapy, a professional environment. So they were using Moxie to help get kids to kind of open up and talk. So these were kids who were coming in, mostly kids who were kind of traumatized by COVID and isolation, and were having kind of social stress, anxiety problems. And so yeah, they were bringing them into these sessions, but the therapist found that they could get the kids to open up more with Moxie. So it was kind of a facilitator of just getting the kids to talk, because some of these kids were just very, very shy, very quiet, didn't want to interact at all. But Moxie's AI, driven too, and I'll have to say it was pretty darn impressive in having these conversations with Moxie, because as you point out, right, so the soft curves and colors and big eyes and smile and very kind of comforting. The voice was very easy and soothing and kind of happy tone. And yeah, and this robot AI character did a great job of just wanting to engage with you. And oh, let's have a story, and let's do this, and wanted to play a game. And so anyway, they were having some pretty good success with it. And because of the AI, the potential there, part of what was happening is the AI would begin to learn kind of the personality of the child and the interests. And so each conversation could kind of build upon some memory there, where Moxie would actually remember some of previous conversation. And anyway, so it wasn't fully baked yet. It was still kind of new, but
I
there's
think
so
like
much
it was
going on in this field. Yeah.
right. I mean, it was really amazing. They also did a panel with Children's Media Association that was insightful. And I think like after they shut down, they got thrown under the bus a lot because AI is so evolving. Like I love their team. Like they had all researchers input, educators input, like the designers were very thoughtful about it. The founders were very pro child development, but no one had imagined a scenario when suddenly these social robots stop functioning. How might it affect children psychologically then?
Mm,
Because there was like a whole series of YouTube videos popping up on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube where children were like in tears, like, oh, Moxie stopped working because their parent company lost their funding and it was shut down. And so
yeah.
kids were kind of like grieving as if like a real person had died. And now some people say that, well, kids cry even when their regular like teddy bear is broken or
Yeah.
ruined in some way. So it's the same, but it's not the same though. Like you develop a deeper emotional connection with a two-way conversation. And
Mm,
so I don't blame the designers at all because this is a scenario no one had imagined, but it was a wake-up call for the research and design community because there's this thing called, the end of life planning for any product. So if you're heavily relying on any electronic item or any kind of tool, basically, there's usually some kind of like a running shoes with lights, for example. So some people criticize Nike for designing the kind of light up shoes that cannot be recharged. And ideally, you're supposed to recycle the batteries separately, but they are built into the shoe. And so
right.
it's not environmentally friendly to build it that way. So it's kind of similar here that we haven't yet started thinking about for like the social robotics field, the end of life mechanism, that how might we prepare children for the thing that's coming. That toy is going to break down, whether due to regular wear and tear or the subscription service might go away or some other thing.
Yep.
And so yeah, that has become now I think a new opportunity for researchers and designers to rethink that maybe there's an orientation, like as the kids activate the toy for the first time, maybe some reassurances that I'm just an AI toy and I may not function forever, or like some kind of nudges for joint engagement, that can you call your mom or dad, or like based on whatever profile information you've provided, that can you involve them in this activity,
Right.
so avoiding isolation on purpose.
All right, let's take a quick commercial break. I want to plug the Human Intelligence Movement. No, this is not a paid advertisement. I'm just a fan. I support the work that those guys are doing. And the mission of the Human Intelligence Movement is to ensure that all students have the skills to thrive and succeed in an AI-powered world. So there's a link in the show notes. Please check them out, support that organization, join the movement. Now, back to my conversation with Sonia Tiwari. We're going to take a deeper dive into the ethical use of AI-powered characters and the need for regulation. Let's go. Yeah, no, there's lots of work to be done here. So I want to get into, you did a keynote presentation for the Kid Tech conference on designing AI characters for kids. So without going through the whole keynote, there was some interesting stuff there on that framework that you presented there. Can you give us some of the keys to that and what the greatest challenges are to designing these characters so that they actually facilitate learning experiences?
I think like the highlights would be to really plan the scale of interaction, which goes like on the lower end, it's just information retrieval, for example. So we ask Alexa type of smart speakers, how's the weather? And it will give a straight up answer. And so there's like less risk involved in information seeking type of conversations. Then there's like light parasocial interaction where maybe you have a name for this character and maybe it does have some relevant memory to sort of optimize your learning experience, like a tutor who remembers the last thing that you learned.
Mm,
And so that's very light parasocial interaction. Again, does not lead to any kind of addiction. And the interaction is usually 15, 20 minutes of a tutoring session, for example. And Buddy AI, Allo AI are like language tutoring examples, or Duolingo. So we see educational benefits without emotional reliance. On the higher end of that scale are parasocial relationships where kids begin to consider an AI character a friend or a social other. That can get challenging. And then there's like the full-blown companionship, like you read news about someone married an AI companion on Replica, or all to me that's the other extreme of this scale.
right. The
So
movie Her, right?
right, and
Yes.
yeah, that scenario has played out in real life now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of feel like there's no binary in practicality, and that is what I appreciate coming from industry into academia, is that theoretically we say all AI companions are bad, or all anthropomorphizing is bad. And that's why I use the term AI character more than companion, because companion is the end of that scale. Characters can exist on this spectrum. And so to me, that's more practical terminology, that, well, it's an AI character and it's not designed for companionship.
Mm.
So designing those kind of purpose-driven, contextual AI characters for kids could be beneficial when done well. And then leaving it open-ended and having them talk to these AI characters for hours without any oversight, of course, is going to be problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. What about so regulation? I know there's been a lot of talk about this, and of course, with that lawsuit you referred to earlier, this was the industry itself is basically unregulated. Nobody really has oversight to say your character can't have this kind of conversation, right? That if the child asks something inappropriate, the AI should respond and say, no, that is not an appropriate conversation for us to have, or to even alert somebody, right? That the
Right.
the system itself knows how to engage a parent or an adult and say, hey, this child is now bringing up topics that are a red flag here. They may be either on the road to self-harm or some other destructive behavior, become a school shooter, whatever. So how do we regulate this? How do we get our hands around these companies that are just profit driven and you know, 99% of the time it's all going to be fine, so we'll just throw it out there, and the AI will be generally safe until you have the one kid who commits suicide because the AI seems to be telling him to. How do we regulate this? How do we put those guardrails around it?
Yeah, so I have started thinking about guardrails at three levels, and it would be naive to assume that it's all within our control. So, one guardrail is like by law, which and a parent, caregiver, educator, we don't have control over laws. Like I've signed a ton of petitions and open letters and whatnot. It's really hard to take care of that at an individual level. Also, the regulations are, it's like a global technology that we are trying to regulate locally. And it's such a joke because it's such a huge technology. There are always workarounds to access. Like even if AI is banned in certain places, you can very easily like reroute your VPN,
Yep.
mask your location, and then you'll have access to it. So we're really trying to navigate this global system. And the irony is that California, particularly Bay Area, Silicon Valley, where I'm now, here is where all of the innovation is happening, and we are almost like the least regulated place in this regard. And Europe, for example, EU laws have worked at a much better pace than the US. And so there are like these ununiformly regulated laws at the bigger level. The second level is by design. So this is again like without law, this is more an emotional appeal to designers that please be developmentally appropriate. So usually ed tech C-suite executives, if they have a background in education and if they're a parent and maybe they've been reading the news and they are really passionate about building ethical products, which is kind of like the Buddy AI and Elo AI examples that I was giving, their founders are like that. They care about education. So when you have a caring leader, then they do take the time to hire some researchers trying to build more guardrails. But the race to be the first of everything, like we are the first AI powered tutor, we are the first AI powered companion or necklace or whatever. Within in that race, a lot of other executives just forget about ethics and guardrails, that we'll only do what is required by law. Everything else is like, fine, let's just release our MVP. So they launch this half-baked product and give access to kids and families. And families are tech challenged, right? Like I'm from the gaming industry and my 12-year-old has already like surpassed my gaming skills and his understanding and knowledge of gaming. So even I can't keep up. And I've heard similar things from like other researchers in this phase that are like, boy, every day we wake up and there's some new development in AI. It's hard to keep up with. So how can you expect like an average non-technology, non-research background person to keep up with this when the experts are also not able to keep up with it? So the burden kind of falls on designers, and my workaround is like get those designers early. So I do a lot of guest lectures in design schools where these will be the future designers of AI products and appeal to them directly. But again, like this is an appeal, so it's a gentle guardrail in a way. And then the final guardrail is the culture that we build around the usage of these AI products. So I sort of advocate that if you have a tween or teen at home, just have an open conversation, hold space for them to come and talk to you so they will not feel the need to rely on an AI companion as much. But even as I say this, I know this is very naive. Kids find a way to
Yeah.
go around all the guardrails you can think of. And the reality is a lot of children don't have that kind of open space or a caring adult in their family. So then it's, again, it would be a simplistic solution to a systemic problem to say that build a good culture and build those guardrails in the product and create some laws. But even then, if we don't give safe spaces to young people, don't check in on them, and if they're going through some kind of trauma silently, they are going to reach out for whatever tool is available to them. And if that happens to be an AI chatbot who offers them kindness at a time when no one else is being kind to them, they will try it.
Yeah. So it raises an interesting question for me, and I hadn't thought of this ahead of time, so I apologize if this is kind of half-baked out of my head, but is it possible that there could be a view of this that says companionship AI is not appropriate for children at all? Just like we say children can't buy cigarettes or alcohol, right? Because they're not mature enough to be able to deal with this. You have to be at least 18 or 20 or 21, depending on, where you are to make that decision to harm yourself in this way, right? To poison yourself with cigarettes or alcohol. Should we be looking at companionship apps? So these AIs that are designed specifically for companionship and saying this is never really appropriate for a minor, and just say, yeah, these products should state right up front, this is not appropriate for you if you are under the age of 18. I mean, I guess convince me that there's really scenarios where we should have companion AI for minors.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I think like every child development person I know agrees with you on that one, that it's not like we don't even need it. It's kind of like all you can eat buffet. Just because you can, should you just go and like shove yourself with everything? And so that's the AI feature scenario going on, that, oh, this is not just an app, it's also a companion, and it will also like teach your kid how to tie your shoelace and ride their bike, and they can come to us for, then why do you even need parents and friends, like if the AI is going to do everything?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I absolutely agree, there is no need for an AI companion for a child. And I, the type of companies I consult with and the products that I help build are more, goal oriented, small interactions, more like a tool than a friend or a companion.
Right, right. Your focus is around learning experiences.
Right,
So,
right.
and I absolutely agree. I mean, and this is why I had you on the show, is because that's what interests me, is how do we enhance learning experiences? And I completely agree that in that scenario, the AI can be very powerful and positive, right? That it can really enhance learning experiences. And when you layer in this, I guess, clever and intentional character design to help augment that learning experience, even better, right? So powerful AI with really good design, character design, seems like it would be a very powerful combination. So let's talk about this foundation, right? So the Falling Walls Foundation. So tell me about this program. How intensive is it, and what are you hoping comes out of that experience?
Yeah, so what I love about it is that the 20 researchers that they've picked are all from different disciplines. So some fields are, like cognitive neuroscience and pharmacy and like a ton of like medical fields that I don't even understand. So this is the first time when I've sat across from researchers from other domains. I kind of felt like I had pigeonholed myself in this tiny, tiny bubble of just education researchers. So that's the most exciting thing. We meet sort of online frequently. So every week or so, there's a webinar or a get together of all the researchers where we share our updates and strategies. There's like some training from a previous cohort or some other well-known researchers. And then there are two in-person meetups in Berlin where the foundation is based. And so that's more like a in-person programming, like a mini conference.
Okay.
And what I'm hoping to learn is just how to do some outreach work with research, because that's one big piece that's I feel like missing in mainstream academia. Our work is usually published in academic journal articles that are hiding behind a paywall, like you need a university subscription to access the full PDF. And like my research is very practice oriented. I want educators like K-12 teachers and designers at game studios to kind of make use of these tools. And they don't have that kind of university subscription that gives them access to those PDFs. So my workaround has been to do more, like podcasts like this, or share the PDFs of my presentations on LinkedIn, and like some other ideas that I learned from that Falling Walls Foundation group is just, interacting with the social media content of organizations that might benefit from your research.
Mm.
So like there's one of the scientists there who is studying how to improve our immunity just by creating a routine in our day. And so she was like, who will benefit from this kind of information? It's like usually everybody, but one other place could be organizations that are trying to rehabilitate people from unhealthy behaviors to healthy behaviors.
Mm.
So she started speaking and interacting with those kind of nonprofits and activists in that space more. So figured out like a unique pathway to be a research-based activist in a way.
Yeah.
And so those kind of discussions help me figure out that let's just take a step back. Where did scholarship come from? What was the goal of journals in the beginning? It was to create this peer review system that, you know, any moron can say that, oh, this is the truth. I did a study, I did a research, and this is what I found. And so ideally, the goal of this academic publication was that you submit it, there will be multiple reviewers, they'll give you feedback, you'll have the chance to have develop this shared intelligence-based scholarship that can benefit humanity. And then fast forward, it has just become like a tenure review piece that, oh, I should, you know, publish or perish. I need more citations because I need to pass my review. And so this fellowship is kind of helping me refocus on what the original goal of research and scholarship used to be, which was for benefit of humanity. And to do that, we need to put out those ideas not just in academic journals, but in places where the target audience naturally collaborates or communicates with each other.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting because this is something I've been struggling with kind of all along, is this conflict almost between the academic side of research and study and say important research that's done, but it's done very, very slowly, as
Right.
one person put it to me, in glacier pace, right, of the work that goes on there. And so you have this problem with the world is moving really fast. AI is advancing at unbelievable speed, but then you have this kind of deep-seated academic culture that says, oh, no, 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 no. Pump the brakes there because we've got to go do a 2-year study and then do peer review. And, you know, maybe by the third or fourth year, we might publish something in a very isolated, you know, say only academics see it. And it could take 5, 6, 10 years before it really disseminates out, you know, practically. And I've had academics tell me this is perfect. This is exactly how it should work, right? It takes that much time to really understand what a change in pedagogy or academics learning should be, right? But, you know, AI is doubling its capacity and capability every 6 or 9 months. And so waiting 10 years for some academic research to really disseminate out is unbearable at this point. So how do you balance that and do what you're describing, right? Where you're kind of doing the research, but at the same time, you're kind of sharing bits of what you're learning and finding and collaborating more publicly, because there are academics who will poo-poo it, right? And say, oh, no, 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 it can't be valid, you know, research. It's not peer reviewed and acceptable yet. And the fact that you're collaborating with people outside of this circle of academia diminishes your findings. So how are you kind of navigating that reality of the two worlds?
I think like I've made peace with the fact that maybe I'm not meant to be a tenured professor, and maybe that's why I don't appear scholarly enough in mainstream academia. I'm in this weird sort of third space, which initially I kind of felt insulted by, that, wait, you don't think I'm good enough to be a professor? Like, how come I'm not getting those tenure jobs? But now I've made peace with it and I celebrated that, well, isn't it better to have research that goes into practice immediately at scale and it has immediate impact? And so I've started reframing that experience that, sure, I did not make it to a traditional tenure track university professor job, but this is also meaningful and this is also required work that I'm well positioned to do, because many of the traditional professors do not have an industry background. They go straight from bachelor's to master's to PhD to teaching.
Yep.
And so which is not to say that that work is not meaningful. I think like there's some deep intellectual work that can only happen with people who are completely immersed in that environment. But then there's also the need for work that has some more immediate implications and more practical applications. So both things can be true. I've just like learned to make peace with the fact that I'm not going to fit that traditional model of professorship, and that's okay.
Yeah, good for you. I agree. I think we have to there's so much to learn and problems to solve and potentially dangerous components, right? As powerful as AI is, it can be used for good, but it can also be used for evil, if you will, even whether it's intentional or not. But part of the struggle, right now is the profitability problem. You have all of these companies seeing dollar signs and throwing stuff out there. Say it's unregulated and they can make money really quick with some flashy marketing campaign and a cute character, and they're making money, but they may be doing harm at the same time, and they figure they're going to stuff their pockets for a while and then they'll bail out when the alarms go off, right?
Right.
So yes, we need folks like you who are getting the word out there on what is safe and what you should be doing, and helping us figure out what those guardrails are. So so what's the future? So where do you go from here? When do you finish? First of all, it's like a 1 year program, right? With the
Yeah, it
solid
ends
walls.
the
Yeah.
yeah, it ends in November.
Okay.
And by the end of it, I'm hoping to have like a few publications and some more like resources for designers for immediate application. And I have been sharing the bits and pieces of that work on LinkedIn already.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the plan. Like this year, that's the plan.
Okay. And how do you make a living after November? What what's the goal there? How do you sustain and keep doing the great work you're doing, right? Somebody's got to pay you to do this. What's the plan?
I mean, it would be hard to predict. As of now, I'll go through the job application process, but I'm hopeful that all of the consultation work that I've been doing, maybe there's some long-term collaboration opportunity in some of my existing clients. In ed tech, especially in AI startup culture, there's usually not a permanent full-time role for a researcher. The consultation model works better because it's like during the beginning, middle, and end of a product launch cycle, it's like a touch point with a researcher to do some testing. But maybe by December, I wonder how things will change, and maybe there's like a long term stable position for an industry researcher. Otherwise, like I said, I've reframed this in a way that this is almost like activism and advocacy work that I have to make peace with the fact that it may not be a straightforward path, but at the same
Yeah.
time, translating this research into action items, one company at a time, even if it comes in 3 month increments as a consultant, it is a meaningful role. So I'm mentally prepared to continue that consultant model.
Yeah.
But yeah, if a long-term position comes my way, I'll be open to it.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. It actually reminds me there's another person I know from the game industry whose specialization was in culture fit. So looking at a game and whether it is offensive to particular cultural groups, right? And so she built this whole consulting career around essentially when somebody's getting ready, they're designing a game, they will bring her in as almost like an auditor to go through the game and say, there's a whole group out there that's going to go nuts that you're depicting it that way, right? You've got a bias that's going to kill a whole market you want to get to. So I can picture you having a similar kind of consulting career where they're designing characters and they bring you in as a consultant to say, okay, help us. This is what we're trying to achieve. And yeah, help us with these designs to understand how to do this better so we don't do harm. We actually enhance learning experiences. So, well, I'm rooting
Great.
for you. I hope that all works out because it is, as I said right from the beginning, I think this is a very important space. I think what you're doing is quite unique. I haven't met anybody else who focuses specifically on this and the development of the AI characters in the learning experience environment. So good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add? Any?
I just recall the name of the researcher. So shout out to Hiroshi Nitono, who did the research on Kawaii framework. And then, yeah, if anyone's curious and looking at the framework for designing ethical AI characters, or any educators, if they want to assess how that's impacting a child's learning, those frameworks are on my LinkedIn featured section.
Great, great. Well, I will certainly have a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. Any other resources you want to share, like the Japanese guy, you know, and I'm not even going to attempt to say his name, but if if you want to share, any resource links like that, I can put them in the show notes as well. Okay. So folks find them.
All
Great.
right, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad we finally had this conversation. It has been wonderful, and as I expected it would be, enlightening. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We covered a lot of ground in that discussion, and the conversation actually went in a slightly different direction than I anticipated, but it was all good. I think we can conclude that AI-powered characters can enhance learning experiences, but they also need to be supervised by a human and designed intentionally with ethical guardrails so that they're appropriate for students to interact with. There's links in the show notes so you can contact Sonia. Hopefully you have an interest in following her work or maybe even collaborating. So please check that out, connect with her. All right, I'm Eric Byron. Thanks for listening to the Education Innovators podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Please subscribe. And to all those education innovators out there, thanks for doing what you do, and keep doing it because you are making a difference.